We are back. Time for another edition of the Carolina Insider. This a rapid reactions edition following tough night in at the Smith Center as Marquette gets the 83-70 victory over the Tar Heels. First home loss of the year for Carolina. I'm Jones Angell. That's Adam Lucas. We are going to chat about this for a little bit. You'll hear and see Coach Williams in his postgame press conference, and it was a hot one. And CB McGrath is going to be here to break down a couple things that he felt were important in this game and just didn't go right for the Tar Heels. And Adam, that's a good place to start because not much went right for the Tar Heels in this game. I think two things. Number one, Marquette played very well, but this was a 10-12 team that had lost 6 of its last 8. The Golden Eagles came in. They were the aggressor for a large majority of the game, particularly the first half. It took Carolina a while to wake up, and by the time the Tar Heels did, they were down by 16 at the break.
Carolina just didn't play well enough to win in really any phase of the game. You expected the Tar Heels to have a big advantage inside. They had a little tiny advantage inside. You expected them to make more shots than they did, and they allowed Marquette to warm up. And Carolina just too careless with the ball against a team that has been very, very poor at forcing opponents to commit turnovers. And Carolina was very generous with the turnovers on the way to 19.
Marquette only, on average, were forcing about 10 to 11 turnovers right there in that range per game. And as Adam said, Carolina had 19. And Adam, that's a good place to start our rapid reactions. And hard to go anywhere else other than those turnovers, Adam. There was one stretch in the first half when Carolina, I believe it was, made 6 of 7 or 6 of 8 shots and actually lost ground in the game because they were turning it over so often in between those shots.
And just all manner of turnovers during the sequence that you'll see. Carolina had careless turnovers. They had errors of commission. You had Marquette right there being much stronger with the ball than Walker Kessler was. You have Tar Heels bumping into each other. The really surprising thing is Carolina actually had more points off turnovers than Marquette, 21-19. But you just had no offensive flow whatsoever because you never got into any consistent offense.
Adam, also, and just by the way, it wasn't just one player here. There is at least one turnover for every player except Armando Bacot, who played in the game. Every other Tar Heel turned it over between 1 and 4 times in the contest. You mentioned Carolina expecting to have an advantage down low. Roy Williams has talked about this a bunch this year, that Carolina has to make the interior the dominant factor of the game on a consistent basis to have a chance to win. And you said it, the Tar Heels do have a slight advantage here. You look down at the numbers. Heels were +1 rebounding, +2 in the paint, +4 on second chance points, but that is not dominating down low.
And just, yes, Carolina's advantage was down there, and they just didn't get enough. Garrison Brooks had a little more of a Garrison Brooks type game, but that just wasn't enough, and Marquette was too good on the inside, as you see there, just a whiff on a box out, and Roy Williams will show that over and over again in film tomorrow and for the rest of this week. Carolina just wasn't good enough. They weren't tough enough in the paint against Marquette.
So, again, Carolina with a slight advantage in some of those, but you see there some big baskets from the interior for Marquette. That includes, by the way, Dawson Garcia, who was the leading scorer and rebounder in this game for Marquette. The freshman had 24 points and 11 rebounds. He was 9 of 13 from the field and 5 of 5 from the free throw line. Adam, our final point here in our rapid reaction segment is the penetration and pitch. Marquette is not the first team to do it, but they certainly had success with it tonight. Particularly, it felt like in the first half where they were able to drive, break Carolina's defense down, and then kicking out for an open look.
Marquette hits just under 40% of their three-point shots. You know Steve Wojciechowski knows the book on Carolina. Defensively, you want to force them to help off of three-point shooters, which the Tar Heels did consistently, and Marquette shot it well enough. They weren't on fire like we've seen some Carolina opponents, but they shot it well enough on softly guarded shots to win the game.
And again, it felt like particularly in the first half, that was a big deal. Marquette was 6 of 15. They came in averaging about 6.5 threes a game and made that average in the first half. Not as successful in the second half where they were 3 of 9, but the 6 in the first half helped build that lead to as large as 18 and eventually 16 at the break. So, Adam, I had said this on the radio postgame. I think the best news for Carolina is that this was not a conference game. That's about the only thing they can take out of this, because falling to 14-8 overall against a team that is still below 500 in a home game, certainly not the result the Tar Heels were looking for.
Well, and Carolina's put itself in this position where it has to worry about things like the net rating. That's going to be a quadrant 3 loss, which is a bad loss to have on your resume. That's the first Q3 loss that Carolina's had this year. We've reached this point where the Tar Heels have to worry about things like that because they have not been able to put together any sort of consistency. Now you're facing a formidable stretch. You play Florida State at home, then you go to Syracuse, then you face resurgent Duke. Tar Heels need to get at least 2 of those, I would think, to feel good about not having to do a ton of work in Greensboro.
So Carolina falls 83-70 the final. We are going to send you to Coach Williams' post-game press conference. You'll see that. Come back. CB McGrath is going to join us. He's going to break down a couple of the key sequences of the game here on the Carolina Insider.
Best coach team won today. The team that wanted the basketball game the most won today. The most unselfish team won today. The hardest working team won today. And again, I'll say the best coach team won today.
All right, raise your hand with questions for Coach Williams, please. Andrew, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, the energy that your team had, not just in the first half, maybe early in the second half, was could you just kind of comment on that? And did you sense that there was something up maybe before the game that maybe they just weren't as into it as you would like?
Well, guys, we've laid an egg a couple of times this year, and let's make sure we say this right here. Marquette beat our rear ends. They outplayed us. I said outcoached us. That's not something I enjoy saying, but they outcoached us. They outplayed us. They wanted it more, everything. I was very concerned before the game. Yesterday at practice, our whole attitude, we can't stand a little prosperity, and that's my take on it, Andrew. I thought that, the first 2 possessions of the game, we don't get any box outs, and they get 3 shots the very first possession of the game. Luckily, they missed those, but we had some shots in close early, and we were too soft with them, and so many different things. It kills you at halftime when 3 perimeter players are 0 for 11 from floor. We have 19 turnovers. Can't do that. So many different things, but the best coach team won the game.
Thank you.
Brendan.
Hey, Roy, yeah, you mentioned the turnovers, the 19. It seemed like the guys were trending in the right direction as far as that concerned. Is there anything you can point to, whether that Marquette did or that your guys didn't, to sort of explain that regression?
Well, I think they were more aggressive on the defensive end, but we did some crazy things. It's just some of our turnovers, we threw it. A lob, got a big guy running down the court. We throw it out over his head out of bounds. We have the ball to a big post player. He tries to hit the other post player at the basket, throws it behind him. We get an offensive foul twice. We've made some progression, getting better with taking care of the ball, but we didn't have very good judgment today.
Thank you.
Adam.
Roy, the way that Marquette on offense spreads you out, there's nobody in the paint sometimes, and just have sort of 5 guys driving and kicking and things like that. Is that just, in terms of personnel, a tough matchup for you guys, for your big guys to try to cover that much space, do you think?
Well, it is, but they went to that because their big guys were in foul trouble. That was not going to be you'd have to ask Wojo, and he's got a better idea of what they wanted to do than I did, but I think they would like to have those big guys in the game, and but they got in foul trouble, and then they went to that. But the first thing we talked about was guarding the basketball. You got to get down in stance and guard the ball, and we didn't do a very good job of guarding the ball. We missed some easy shots early, and then it sort of just got worse and worse.
Any other questions for Coach Williams? All right, Josh, go ahead.
Coach, you mentioned you were worried about this game going in. Can you give us a sense for what practice was like heading in?
Practices were okay, but it's just we've had a couple of good wins, and then we turn around and we think we're a lot better than we really are. We don't have the attention to detail. It's bad coaching. Bad coaching. I called a set one time, and I got out, and they ran another set. They're not disciplined enough to do what I say. They went out on the court and changed their mind. So it's bad coaching.
And to follow, what would you say to Carolina fans who are questioning whether or not it made sense to schedule this game considering the result?
Well, if I'd known we were going to lose, God Almighty, I wouldn't have scheduled the thing. Come on, we can't operate in damn hindsight. God Almighty. If you'd told me we were going to lose, hell yeah, we wouldn't have played the game. If you'd told me we were going to beat the Lakers, I'd have scheduled them. Carolina fans, they're not that dumb. If they are, I got no answers for them.
That was not what we wanted tonight in the Smith Center as the Tar Heels lose to Marquette 83-70. Adam and I can talk about it all night, but hey, let's bring in an expert to do so as CB McGrath going to provide us with an insider breakdown.
Thanks, Jones. Obviously, it was a difficult night for the Tar Heels, but that happens sometimes, and I know everybody's disappointed, but we still got 3 more games in the regular season to get things going. There's a few things that obviously are always important with this team and every team is you don't want to have as many turnovers as we had tonight. And we did not start off the first half great, got down 18 points, made a few comebacks, but I thought if we got to single digits at halftime, it would have been a lot better. But the last play of the first half I thought was important just to get some momentum. And we talk about turnovers, and Marquette does a nice job. You know, Kerwin right here is obviously our best shooter. Their defensive player is here to sort of clutter it up so Caleb doesn't think he can drive it as far at the time. You know, he sort of hesitated. When he comes off that screen, he should try and turn it right away. This guy does a nice job, and so he can still get to Kerwin. But in saying that, Caleb does get all the way there. He gets a shot, which is what we want because there's always a chance if we get a shot that we can get the offensive rebound. Garrison does a nice job, finishes it up. We score at the end of the half, 2 points, cut to 16, maybe have a chance. The one thing with no fans in the stands, it makes it, I guess, sort of nice just to sit there and listen to either our bench trying to call it what they might run or their bench calling out what we might run. Well, this is a box play, and everybody that's ever played against Carolina knows what box is. A lot of times they think it's for a lob, and so they're all standing up yelling, lob, 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 you know, because everything looks exactly the same. The point guard starts it out by throwing it to Garrison or a big guy. He's going to come screen for Armando to come out this way, and then Caleb's going to come back out this way. Now, usually, that's what everybody thinks it is, so we could look for the lob for Garrison. And Armando does a nice job of faking it, so instead on this play, normally Kerwin is setting a screen for Garrison to go for the lob as Armando swings the ball. But we have other plays, and it all looks the same, so you don't know what's coming up. So Garrison just decides to screen down for Kerwin, our best shooter. Armando does a nice job faking the pass, getting it back to Kerwin, and this was our first 3 of the game with 18:20 to go in the game. And obviously we need to make more shots than that and get more open looks than that. And then lastly, there's so many clips I could have pulled out whether an offensive rebound got tipped out and our guy didn't get it, or we almost get an offensive rebound ourselves, or we block a shot, it goes right to them, they score a layup. Well, this is just typical. There's 5:26 to go in the game, and I don't know, it might have been 6 to 8 point game, I'm not sure. But we need to get this stop, let alone any kind of loose ball. And Leaky comes off, somebody deflects, looks like Kerwin deflects it. This guy doesn't know where it is. Kerwin, who deflects it, doesn't actually know where it is. He's looking back at this guy. If Kerwin just turns around, we get the ball. Leaky's a little slow getting there. We have to get that ball to have any kind of chance. They tip it out on us, and they end up scoring. So whether it was a 6-point game, 8-point game, turn into 8, 10, whatever it was, that's pretty much ball game.
A word, CB, that we've used a lot this year is consistency, and the Tar Heels looking for consistency. And it feels like they'll take a couple steps forward and then take a big step back. Is youth still a valid answer for some of that inconsistency at this point, or no?
I mean, Coach always likes to say no, but youth in terms of they've never been through an entire college basketball season. Sometimes you've hit a freshman wall, 8 games in, 12 games in, you don't know. But we do have some veterans that were playing, and I thought it was a pretty uninspired effort by everybody that sort of walked out there on the court today. So you can say youth, whatever. Yes, our young guys, we'd like them to be more consistent, but the old guys have to be there night in and night out, no matter what.
Carolina starters were outscored 70-33 tonight by Marquette. I know, but just change the starting lineup is one of the first things that every fan sitting at home says. As a coach and as someone who has worked with Roy Williams, how do you balance maybe this is a one-night performance versus you are getting some pretty impactful play off the bench from a couple of the younger guys?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to look what happens at practice the next few days. I mean, he's going to challenge everybody to the man. Nobody played well enough to probably deserve to start next game, whether it's on the offensive end, defensive end, who knows. But, yeah, I mean, Armando's our leading scorer. He had the first batch of the game, had one free throw the rest of the game. Caleb Love's our second leading scorer with Garrison. He didn't even score a field goal. So, obviously some disappointing offensive efforts, but then even if you have off games on the offensive end, you got to get it done on the defensive end or on the rebounding side of things or not turning the ball over. So there's a lot of factors that play into it in terms of who's going to play well enough to start the next game. And Coach doesn't put that much onus on who actually starts. He just wants the guys that are out there that are going to play the hardest for Carolina.
83-70 the final tonight in at the Smith Center. Again, Marquette gets the first win against Carolina in the Smith Center for any opponent this year. Tar Heels losing at home for the first time. Also, Marquette's first win against Carolina since the 1977 National Championship game. Carolina had won 4 games in a row in this series leading up to tonight. Adam, an important couple days here coming up for Carolina. You mentioned it. Florida State, Syracuse, and Duke are left on the Tar Heel schedule, at least as the schedule stands right now. And the Tar Heels will need to play better in any and all of those games than they did tonight.
CB mentioned practice. That's going to be pretty intense there at the Smith Center Thursday and probably Friday afternoon too. The problem is you can't run them to death. You got Florida State coming to town.
Yeah.
That's the deepest, best team in the Atlantic Coast Conference. You have to be ready to play against them. Tar Heels are well aware of how good Florida State is.
Florida State won by 7 in mid-January in Tallahassee. Tar Heels will try again in the Smith Center coming up Saturday. That's a 4 o'clock game. Radio-wise, we'll be on the air at 3 p.m. for that one. Thanks for being with us tonight. Wish we had better news to talk about, but appreciate you joining us here on the Carolina Insider.